So my name is Tia Ballou. I am an emergency management coordinator here at the Disability Center, the Disability Empowerment Center. And I am here as an AmeriCorps member. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am a white female in my 20s with about shoulder length auburn hair. And today I have a black t-shirt on. Briefly, a little bit about what AmeriCorps is. It is a federal agency that aims to build community resilience. And so previously I was with an interagency partnership with FEMA and AmeriCorps. And so I was able to assist with multiple natural disasters, including hurricanes Milton and Helene. So I was able to directly see the impacts and the importance of having preparedness, especially for communities that are hit disproportionately hard. So next, before we get started in the content, I wanted to do a pre-survey so that I can get an idea of what you guys know and kind of where our baseline is. And I also see in the chat, the recording will be sent out. We also have a YouTube, so it'll be up on the YouTube page as well as a notes page that will be sent out to all of you afterwards. And the slides will be on that too. Okay, so you will see a survey that will pop up on your screen, and it should only take a minute or two. Okay, did everybody get a chance to answer if they would like to? Let's see. Mary, I believe it is a pop-up on the screen. I'm not sure if I can resubmit it. Okay. Into try to add. No, that wasn't it. For the next one, I'll get a link so that you can get a link to it if you aren't able to see the pop-up as well. But we're going to go ahead and end the poll and get going in the content. So it looks like we had some people that were new to emergency management or emergency preparedness. And then it also looks like there's some people that feel very comfortable with it. So this will be great to have all different levels today. In our overview, we're going to talk about knowing what your risks are so that you can be prepared for them, some of the top hazards in the area, things that are relevant for the season, like air purification, power outages, and heat-related illnesses, as well as utilities, communication, the supplies needed, and then some additional resources for you guys at the end. All right, so knowing your hazards. Here in Seattle, it's important to be prepared, not just for things like individual emergencies, especially if you're in the city or outside of it. There's a lot of events, there's a lot of traffic, there's, everyday life. But then also we have the added element being in the Pacific Northwest, that we have natural disasters. Of course, that's everywhere, but knowing what they are and how to prepare for them can help you when they do happen. Just some statistics for the area. At any given moment in the city of Seattle, there are about 250 responders, firefighters, and medical personnel that are on duty. And the population for Seattle is 781,000. So that is a huge amount of people, civilians, compared to responders. So that makes it really important that we are able to keep ourselves safe when we're able to, and then be ready when those events do happen, that it might take some time for those responders to get to us, and how to be comfortable during those times to the best of our ability. And then another addition that I want to add is CMIST, CMIST. It is a framework that was established in 2006, and it's used to identify and address functional needs during emergencies. So it focuses on communication, maintaining health, independence, support and safety, as well as transport. So these are some special elements that we're also going to talk about today that are also huge key components in creating your own emergency plans, your own thought processes around emergencies that can help you, again, be more ready when they happen. These are also things that are taken into consideration for city planning and all different emergency management levels too. So discussing the top hazards, the Office of Emergency Management for Seattle releases a report that goes over identifying different hazards. This one was put out in 2014. It's the most updated one. I know that seems shocking. But it lists out 18 of the top hazards. I have 10 of them listed here, and I will read them out. So the first is earthquakes. The second is snow and ice. The third is windstorms. Fourth is power outages. Fifth is cyber attack / disruption. 6 is landslides. 7 is disease outbreaks. 8 is flooding. 9 is excessive heat events. And 10 is tsunamis and seishes. And a side note, a seiche is a tsunami in a lake or a pond. So out of all of these 10, there's 7 that are highlighted, almost all of these, excluding landslides, flooding, and tsunamis, all of which would require sheltering in place. So if there's an earthquake, snowstorm, windstorm, power outage, cyber attack, disease outbreak, which we saw with COVID, or things like excessive heat events, you would want to stay where you are as long as it's safe versus leaving and evacuating. A lot of times people think of emergency plans. We're going to give a pause for the interpreters. Perfect. A lot of times people think of emergency plans as something that you need to leave because of, and that is not the case, especially here where we have earthquakes as our top hazard. It's good to know and have the items with you on hand. The image on the screen is a map of Washington, and it has the fault lines in red, and they cascade throughout the state, but they're mostly focused within the Puget Sound area, going through the Whidbey Island as well as through Seattle, through the downtown area. And that is a shallow fault line. It is closer to the surface, and there's one in Seattle and Whidbey Island. And so if those do have an earthquake or movement, we would feel it a lot more since it's closer to us. And then there's also the Cascadia subduction zone. That is off the coast of Washington. It goes from Mexico up to Vancouver Island. And a lot of times when you hear people talking about the big one or the large earthquake that could happen, they're referring to the Cascadia subduction zone. It is estimated to move every 250 to 500 years. And the last one that we had was in 1700. So we are within that time period, but it is hundreds of years. So we can't predict exactly when, but it will happen at some point. With that being said, if you do feel an earthquake shake or if you get an alert from your phone, it is good to stop whatever you're doing. And we have an infographic going over if you are a cane user, a walker user, or a wheelchair user, it's good to drop as low as you can, or if you're in a walker or wheelchair, to lock your wheels and then cover. So either getting under a table, or if you're on in your wheelchair or using a walker, to duck and bend over as low as you can, and then covering the back of your head and your neck with anything that you have around you or with your hands. Then last is to hold on, holding on to furniture that is around you, or holding on to, again, the back of your head and your neck if you're in a wheelchair or a walker. Now, those are ideal, but oftentimes you won't be out and about. You might not be in an open room or near a table. So it's good to think about things like when you're laying in your bed, if there's anything above you that could be of concern. So we suggest looking around if you have a light fixture over you, or maybe you have an over the bed art piece or anything like that, and making sure those are fixed in place. And if you are in bed and you feel shaking, you flip over onto your back if you're able to, and then again covering the back of your head and your neck with the pillow. If you are driving, it is good to stop as soon as it is safe and avoid any large buildings, bridges, or things that could move and have debris fall off of. And then just wait a little bit afterwards. There are post shakes after earthquakes. So just give it a little bit of time before you start driving again. And then if you're somewhere that there is not furniture, It is good to go as low to the ground as possible, near a wall that is ideally empty, away from windows, anything that could be more of a concern if it broke or fell on you. Or if you're in a grocery store or really anywhere, just getting close to whatever is the sturdiest piece of furniture or item around you, that would be taller. And if anything fell, it would fall onto that item and not yourself. Along with earthquake response locations, I want to note that a lot of buildings these days are specifically built up to codes so that the building won't be a hazard that you need to worry so much about. Oftentimes, people are concerned about the entire structure collapsing. And of course, that is possible for large earthquakes, but it's more frequent that people are harmed in an earthquake from their surroundings falling and shifting. So it's good to try to mitigate that as much as possible. So securing bookshelves, art pieces, anything that you have that's loose in your home. We also are in summertime, which means that it's wildfire season. So this is an example of a DIY air purification. The supplies are pretty simple and pretty low cost compared to some of the prefabricated ones that you can buy. So it includes a box fan, a MERV 13 air filter, which is the standard size of a box fan as well. So you hopefully won't need to alter anything. Duct tape, cardboard, pencil, and a string. The last items, cardboard, pencil, and string, you may not need. It just will help with directing the airflow. But the general idea is that you take the air filter and you make sure that it's blowing in the same direction that the fan direction is going. And then you duct tape it to the outside so that the two are conjoined. And then if you would like to add a little bit more air direction, you can cut out the cardboard so that it is circular on the middle, and it'll direct the airflow out as a circle and adds a little bit more purification, as well as if you wanted it to go in a specific spot or area. A little bit about MERV 13 filters. They are a rating system that measures the efficiency of capturing airborne particles. So this will capture things like pollen, dust, mold, smoke, anything like that. It covers particulate that's 0.3 to 10 microns in size, but there are more high intensity filters that are available. It just might cause the fan to run slower because it's a more dense filter. It makes it a little bit harder for the airflow. So there are other options if you'd like it to be even more fine particulate being filtered. We also need to discuss heat-related illnesses. We are currently in heat advisory, heat warning for Seattle for the next day or so. And there's a chart on the screen that I'll go over just in brief. But there's three main heat illnesses that we tend to see around the summertime. It is heat rash, which is a skin irritation caused by sweating and being in hot and humid places. And for that, it's good to move into a cooler, dry area away from where you were and to keep that affected area dry. So that could look like baby powder or changing clothing, some of those options. Then we have heat exhaustion. That looks more like headaches, nausea, dizziness, feeling irritable, sweaty, and it is your body's response to being somewhere hot, humid again, and then you're excessively sweating. and losing salt and minerals and water from your body. And so then you start to feel it a lot more. If it is severe, seek medical attention, go to a clinic or an emergency room. Sometimes if you can notice it, maybe you're out all day and you haven't been drinking a lot of water, you notice a headache and you can catch it pretty quickly. Focus on drinking fluids, water, spice it up with a little bit of electrolytes if you have them. You could even add a pinch of salt to water and drink some of that. It'll help you get your minerals back. And applying a cool compress to the back of your neck and your head will help lower your body temperature as well. Then the most serious is heat stroke. So this has the similar symptoms from a heat exhaustion, but it's more intense. So this is when you get either profuse sweating or no sweating. You can have a really high body temperature, can go up to 106 degrees within 15 minutes, which is really dramatic. And for some people, it can result in loss of consciousness, confusion, all different intensities. So seek immediate medical attention if that does happen, calling 911, moving into a cool area with shade, air conditioning. If you have cold compresses, apply them again to the back of the head and your neck, as well as your armpits are another cooling area. And for this time of year, we also have cooling shelters and cooling tips that help as well for individuals that either don't have air conditioning, which I know is kind of uncommon here in Seattle to have air conditioning, as well as individuals who might be unhoused or in transitional periods. There are open community spaces like libraries, malls, community centers, places like the Seattle Armory. There are senior centers and wading pools, swimming pools. There are also cooling centers that are opened during periods like now when we're in a heat advisory that the King County Regional Homelessness Authority releases. So they just sent out an email today, actually, stating that they have increased day shelters and water resources available. In our notes that are going out after this, I have a link to their website if you'd like to receive their notifications, as well as a list of some shelters, day centers, cooling centers, all of those that are available for you guys. I also want to highlight the importance of staying hydrated to avoid all of the heat-related illnesses that we just went over, as well as staying in shade when you can, drinking electrolytes if you're feeling like you're low and you've been sweating a lot. If you're low on energy, they're great. Avoiding things like caffeine, alcohol, and large amounts of sugar also helps your body process when you're out in the heat. Not leaving children or pets unattended in vehicles, and then also providing your pets as well as yourself access to cool water and shade periodically throughout the day. Additionally, there are medications that put you at higher risk for heat-related illnesses. It's likely been told to you if you are on one of those from your doctor or when you pick up your prescription. But it's good to take that into account because sometimes a certain amount of heat exposure that might be fine for one person could be extremely harmful for another. So it's good to keep in check for yourself as well. And now, also for the season, we're going over general power outage tips. So these can be pretty simplified, and a lot of them you guys might know already. But if it's a short-term power outage, try to leave your fridge closed for as long as possible and just eat items from your pantry. If it is a long power outage, if you know that info ahead of time, sometimes you might not, it's good to eat from your refrigerator first, then the freezer, and then the pantry, so that the items that are perishable are eaten first. It is good to have flameless options of light, especially after an earthquake. There are things like post-earthquake shakes. And so if you have only candle lighting, that's another possible emergency that you don't want to put yourself into. It is also really important to have generators that are usable. And if you do use them, only use them outside. So it's good to take into account what type of fuel source they use, prepping ahead of time that you have it, and often they're gas. And so we definitely don't want to have that used indoors. It's good to have an extension cable with it that you know you can run into your home. There's also an image on the screen of a plug-in light. It's an emergency backup light bulb. They are a wall plug that can also convert into a flashlight. So they have their own storable battery source. And it's really great to put them in high traffic areas like hallways, anywhere that you would really want to see when your power goes out. So that could look like your bedroom, your bathroom, your front door, anywhere like that. And those can be found from Walmart, Amazon, Home Depot. I believe they're in most box stores. And if your power does go out, whether it's for a short-term power outage or longer term due to an earthquake or a larger disaster, these are some options for power sources that are not normal electric. And if you do use life-sustaining power, these are essential. And it's good to talk to your care team about what your backup power options are. So some of these, for example, are home dialysis or portable oxygen or a powered wheelchair. Those use between 600 and 650 watts. And you could use things like a home power system, a solar system, an RV onboard solar system, or generators that are for RVs that size are an option. For things with slightly less wattage, like a ventilator, mini fridge, or a nebulizer compressor, which are about 100 watts, you can use things like an electric vehicle. You just need to make sure that it has the right outlet wattage to then be plugged in. Large solar power banks, things like car or marine batteries for a boat, if you are somewhere near water and you have a boat. And then for items that are 10 to 70 watts, which includes feeding pumps, infusion tubes, ventricular assistant equipment, cell phones, things like that. It can be things like a power bank that you would use for your phone, all the way up to a standard small solar power system. You just have to look at whatever you have that you use in your home if you are dependent on an electrical device and seeing what wattage it has, and then if you need a certain converter. Those are the other additional tips to look at when you are planning for your power continuation. It's also really important to have options. I know a lot of these are quite pricey, quite large. It's difficult to plan, but whatever you come up with as a main option, it's good to consider backups so that when one item is charging, if you have, let's say, a generator, while you're using your generator, it's good to have something like a solar recharger so that then when one is not in use, the other can be refilling. so that you can continue your power for as long as absolutely possible. All right, so now moving into utilities, we did just discuss power a little bit. We're going to focus on water for right now. So when there is things like an earthquake, your pipes are going to shake and they'll likely break. So it's good to have a plan for how you're going to gather and store water. So if there is still water flowing to your house or your apartment, wherever you live, run that water for as long as you can, gathering it in food-safe containers with lids, ideally. And then as soon as that water starts to slow down or it turns off, it's good to shut the water off at the main valve. So we have an image on the screen that has a vertical pipe, and then there's a handle about midway, and when it is horizontal, it is closed. So when it's making a T, it is closed. And when the handle is running along the same direction as the pipe, vertically, it is open. You might also have a valve that looks like a wheel. And for those, you would do right to tighten it, left to loosen it, to turn the water off, you turn it to the right. And for your water, you are able to practice. If you do find it, you can see how it works. You may have already had to shut it off if you've had any projects or repairs done to your home. For some of the other utilities, you cannot practice, so it is good to take that into consideration. For another option with water, if you don't have access to fresh, clean drinking water, there are two really great options for purifying it. The first one is boiling, if you have access to fire or a heat source. So taking a piece of cloth or a coffee filter, and you can filter out solid particulate, and then boiling that water for at least 1 minute, and then again storing it in a food grade container with lids. The other option is using bleach, using regular unscented bleach. It's good that it hasn't been open for more than a year. And you can use a dropper from an old medicine or a face serum, or you can be very gentle and pour out the droplets in a separate container if you don't have those small measuring cups or droppers. And we have a chart that'll come up on the screen that'll show you the percentages. It's a good idea to have this printed off if you can, and keep a copy with emergency plans or emergency papers in your home. And then after you add the bleach to your water, you'll just let it sit for about 30 minutes. It should have a slight chlorine odor. That is okay. If it has too much of a chlorine odor, you can pour it into a separate container and let it air out for about 10 more minutes. So for about 1 gallon, you would do 8 drops if you're using 6% bleach. And if you're using 8.25% bleach, you would use 6 drops. If you're using 4 gallons of water, it would be 1/3 of a teaspoon for 6% bleach. And if you're using 8.25% bleach, it would be 1/4 of a teaspoon. And these charts and information are provided by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. And so they'll also be linked in the notes so that you guys can refer to them later and print them if you'd like. For things like electrical, if you smell or see anything burning, it's immediate to turn off your electricity. The insulation burning would be like a plastic chemically smell. So you would shut it off at the main breaker, It could be found in different parts of your home. They're usually near a main entrance or something like that. And there's a main breaker handle at the top. And whenever you're touching or manipulating anything with your electrical box, it's really important to not be in standing water, and then to also not touch anything metal. So one handy trick is to keep one hand behind your back and just use one hand to turn them on or off so that you know that you aren't resting your hand on something accidentally or, without realizing it, reaching for something or holding something that could be of concern. And for your last utility that we'll talk about is gas. Some homes don't have a gas hookup, but if you do, it's important to not shut this off unless you know you need to. So if you hear hissing coming from the machine, from the mechanism, if you smell it, it would be like a sulfury smell, as well as if you see like gas, or if you smell it, you would smell it before you see it. And you would just turn it off with a crescent wrench. So it's important to know that you have that tool if you do need it. Some people keep it next to their gas shutoff, so that is ready if they do. But the thing to note with that is that if you do turn it off, you personally will not be able to turn it back on. Your gas company will have to come out. So that's one that we were mentioning, that you can practice shutting off water and things like that. But the gas, you cannot. If you do not want to have to deal with your gas, there are items, a device called a seismic gas shutoff valve, and your utility company can add it to your gas meter. It is a ball that rests on a pin, and when it feels vibrations, it will move, and then it'll swing a handle that will then close the gas pipe on its own. So some people are worried that, like, what if the neighborhood kid accidentally kicks it with a soccer ball or something like that? These have a higher level of sensitivity for things like earthquakes, so that should not be a concern. But if you do want an option that you don't have to think about, if something happens and you're not home, then you know that this has your back. It will shut it off for you. And then another topic that, again, isn't as glamorous, but when we do have a disaster and things are shaking and pipes break, you do have to think about how your long-term waste management will look. So the image on the screen is a 5-gallon bucket with toilet paper, gloves, a toilet seat, hand sanitizer. And you can create your own twin bucket toilet is the name for it, by having 2 5-gallon buckets. And you can also use a pool floaty cut in half to create a seat cover if you don't want to purchase one. For liquid items, those can be tossed and disposed of on the ground or in soil. Urine is not a biohazard, it's mostly minerals and water, whereas solid waste is of concern and it can cause more illnesses or disease. So that is the most important item. For solid waste, it's good to have a separate bucket and then having a trash bag in that bucket. And after you use the restroom, you add any sort of dry material. That can be sand, cat litter, could even be old baking boxes, like cake mix that you have laying around in your house, anything that's dry. And then you'll seal that bag, removing any air, and then dispose of it ideally, if you are in an earthquake or something large scale, wherever you're living will hopefully have a dedicated space for solid items like that, so that it's an area away from people where everything is collected until the city or a biohazard related group can come and dispose of it. And then communication, which is also hugely important. It's good to have emergency plans. So there are different types of emergencies, and those will all require different types of plans. Your response to a home fire will look different to an earthquake, and it's good to have some of those plans thought out in your head, as well as having them written down. It can be overwhelming to think about all the different types of plans, but it's good to kind of break it down into two categories of your plan if you have to evacuate, and then a plan if you have to shelter in place. So I suggest that as a good starting place. A lot of what we discuss for natural disasters is about sheltering in place, since that's more common, or more of our hazards would necessitate that. So I think that's a great place to start as well. And then after that is collecting your information, things like emergency contact cards with important numbers and physical data like maps, as well as digital, which are also important, but knowing that you have the physical options in case everything has run out of power and you don't have any way to recharge. Then deciding on what are the best communication methods. So it's good to have primary, a secondary, and then a third backup. So for example, during large events, phone calls do not go through as easily as text. So text is recommended for reaching out to people. So for example, my top would be text message, the second would be radio, and the third would be writing a sign in the window. So if one of those doesn't work, I'll move on to the next, or maybe attempt all of them if things aren't going through or I'm not hearing from people. Then having meeting locations, again, for your different plan types, it might look like a plan for how you're going to get home from locations that you frequent, like a literal map from your work, for example, to your home. And then starting to think about the different ways that you could problem solve getting back to your home if you're at work, as well as things like evacuations. It's good to have an evacuation location that's within your neighborhood, further out of your neighborhood, and then outside of your city for different levels of evacuation needs. Then it's also really important to share that plan with the people around you, your household members, or your support network. And we'll talk a little bit more about the importance of a support network, but making sure that other people know what you're going to do so that they can help you when you are reaching out and communicating, or if you are going to your meeting location so that they will know ahead of time. And updating, of course. Anytime that you have a life change, or every 1 to 2 times a year, just reviewing, has anything changed? Is that evacuation location still accessible? And does that still work for me? Did you move? That's another huge rewrite of your plans. So it's good to take those into consideration. So your personal support network is 3 or more people, and these are people that you trust and that you know, and they would want to know how to enter your home, be familiar with your routine and your care, your equipment, your supplies, and then again, your plans, your evacuation or emergency plans. So if you do not have people nearby, that's okay. It can be people within your city or just people that you know and that you can rely on to assist you in whatever means that may look like. It could be checking in and doing communication aspects. It could be showing up physically. It's really important to get to know your neighbors if you're able to. The people around you are going to be your immediate response groups. And so knowing that you have them and that they're familiar with you and how you function, how you prefer to communicate, and where you're going is really important. Having your emergency contacts physically written and also having all of these like physical contact cards in different places is highly important. They're all in our phone, but I know I'm not going to remember people's phone numbers off the top of my head, and I won't think of a veterinarian or my physician. So it's good to have these thought out ahead of time. The Red Cross has their own template that's really great. There's also a couple versions online that you can print out or just write on an index card. And then if you put it into a Ziploc bag, it makes it waterproof as well, which is a bonus. Things like household members, your out of town contact, your neighbors, your friends, landlord, employer, physicians, pet sitter, veterinarian. And then the two at the bottom is KIRO 710 for an AM radio, or it's 97.3 FM. Those are emergency radio communications that if you have something like a NOAA weather radio, you can get alerts through them and they'll post updates and everything like that. And then also going back to that out of town contact, it's very, very important to have somebody that is outside of this immediate area. We like to suggest someone that is east of Spokane, so further more inland from where we are, so that the likelihood of them being in the same disaster or issue is much less likely. And again, it'll be harder to have phone calls go through, but it's easier for them to go through when it's further away. So if I try to call my partner who's also in Seattle, the phone call might not go through. But if I call my family that's in another state, for example, there'll be a much higher chance that they do hear from me. And then they can be the updating contact point that can then reach out to my partner or anyone else that we're trying to update, as well as being somebody that you can tell them to update on social media platforms for you to let other people know that you're safe as well. And this is another important item, especially for emergencies like individual emergencies, home, things within your home. Having a pre-written or memorized script can be really helpful. There's already so much adrenaline going and there's a lot happening. It's very easy to be flustered, and especially if you're somebody that has unique communication needs or nonverbal or any different ways that that looks for you, this is a great option to have it pre-written in a specific area with your emergency plans and your notes that you can either hand to somebody as a way for you to communicate this, or you can read off of. So it begins with your name and your communication style. This is what you would reach out to 911 with and then immediately supply. So my name is blank and I communicate by blank. Please give me time to respond. Then a dispatcher would need to know your location. So there is blank happening and I need blank. And then updating if you're physically okay, I am or I am not injured, or I am or I am not flustered. You can give an update on where you're at in general. And then adding any additional information. For example, I don't like loud noises. I have a service animal. I use a wheelchair. You could also add additional information for how that person would get into or around your home. So these are a great option to think about ahead of time again, and then having something preset that you can go off of so that you can take away a little bit of that anxiety or concern that you have with that communication. For your supplies, I'm going to do kind of a brief overview of this, but there's three main types of kits. A stay kit, which would be about 14 days worth, because we are in an area that has earthquake proneness as well as other emergencies. FEMA as well as other agencies recommend having supplies for up to 2 weeks due to how it could look for a response to get into the area. An item like a get home bag, which would be used to get from wherever you're at, like your work, or maybe a friend's home or a family's home, to wherever your stay kit is, so that you can be sheltering in place more comfortably. This can be a small, lightweight bag that you keep in your car or at work. Then the last is a go bag. This is good for about 42 to 72 hours. It's a backpack or a portable item that you're able to move or carry on your own if you have to leave your home. Only grab these if you have time and if it's safe. They're also good for things like if you have a medical emergency, you're able to direct personnel or EMTs to a backpack that you want to bring with you, and it can make your hospital stay much more comfortable. It could also be important items if there's a house fire, things like that, that you want to be able to grab, again, if you're able to safely, and then leave. This is the general items for kits. Mostly targeting like a stay kit. It has larger items, but then you would just pare it down to smaller quantities for your other kits. Water, you want to have 1 gallon of water per person per day. Non-perishable foods, ideally foods that don't use a heat source. And of course, you want to choose foods that you enjoy eating. You don't want to be in a really stressful situation with foods that you don't enjoy. Flashlight and extra batteries, first aid kit, an N95 mask, battery-powered weather radio with batteries, extra medications and medical supplies, sanitary wipes, trash bag, 5-gallon buckets, portable phone charger, a paper and pen, a whistle for people to be able to locate you or for you to get people's attention, local maps, and important documents. All right, and for digital resources, these are a couple alert apps. So there's one called MyShake, which is an earthquake warning system. The Alert Seattle, which is a county-wide alert system. Red Cross sends out alerts, and FEMA as well. Both Red Cross and FEMA might be more national level, so it might not be as specific as you would like, but that's why it's important to also have things like a county or a city specific system like Alert Seattle. And then as well as that radio station, 97.3 FM, and having communication apps like Smart 911 also provide you with specialized information that you can input into the 911 system, so that if there is an emergency and responders are arriving at your house or your location, they can know ahead of time if you are on certain medications, if you maybe have certain specifics of getting into your home, maybe there's a gate or a gate code or a key to enter, you're able to input that information ahead of time so that responders can save a minute or two getting to and responding. There's also Show Me, which is an emergency communication app. It is wonderful and it has images for nonverbal communication. It also has different languages if you are not comfortable or if English is a second language for you. And then having navigation like your Google Maps downloaded, like we were saying, your way from getting wherever you frequent, like work, back home. It's good to have some of those downloaded ahead of time so that if there isn't service, if you aren't able to view it, you absolutely need to check it and you only have a digital option that is there for you. Again, of course, recommending physical maps as well, though. And then another way that you can get involved is with the Seattle Emergency Hubs. These are a way of connecting neighborhoods with preparedness. It's good to have individual preparedness, like coming to events like these, which we're all really glad to see you guys here today. And then there's also neighborhood preparedness. There's Seattle Neighborhoods Actively Prepared, as well as a program called CERT, CERT, which prepares you for your community as well as your neighborhood and being prepared and helping those around you. And then there's things like the Seattle Emergency Hubs. So they are locations, there's about 100 throughout Seattle within neighborhoods where you can go to meet up and get information on what is happening, if there's any updates for the emergency. A lot of times people that might have emergency radios will also be located there so that you can try to communicate. Any sort of resource matching, if there's people within your neighborhood that are in need of something, or if you have excess of something, they'll also help with that. So it's just a great way to network and connect, and it's all volunteer run. So we will also include this at the notes page so you can look within your area and see if there's one that's already existing that you can reach out to and get involved with, or if you would like to start your own, if you notice that your neighborhood doesn't have one yet. It's a great program. All right, so I know that was a huge amount of information. We're 2 minutes over, but I am going to open it up if anybody has any questions, as well as put another poll in the chat just to see how you guys are feeling. You can also come off of mute if you'd like to ask the questions, if you have anything. All right, well, thank you so much, you guys. I know that was a ton of information. I also want to reiterate that we will have notes coming out as well as slides. And thank you so much for everyone for spending your time with us today, and as well as for providing your feedback. It helps us with future events, and we really appreciate hearing your thoughts. So Cynthia will help close this out now.
Thank you guys for coming today. A quick reminder that today's session was recorded and will be uploaded on the Disability Empowerment Center's YouTube channel. If you'd like to revisit the conversation or share it with others, we will post the link in the chat. You can also check out future events by looking at the Disability Empowerment Center's webpage, which will link in the chat. Thank you again for attending our Emergency Readiness for Everyone event, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.